If the narrative around G2 already was like essentially hand them the trophy, no one could beat them, they win every scrim. You know, if you notice nowadays, people, it's hard to even actually call them out if they had a bad game or they did a stupid draft because it just feels like they're just experimenting in scrims, but those are stage games now, if you know what I mean. But here's what I will say that tells me I don't think anyone else believes they can actually beat G2 was that fucking BDS lane swap that is the big drama. I'm not going to get into the drama or whether or not it was leaked. Yeah. Here's the reason why that is a terrible sign for the LEC. Because, guys, if you actually go and look at where the BDS players had to go, let's say it wasn't known and they were just gambling that this was the right call based on what they initially saw, that this was the counter to the invade, right? The gamble positions they took, this is where fans will never understand. You have to be able to imagine, this is where ProView would be so sick. You have to be able to imagine it without the fog of war of the rest of it, right? You can only see what they can see. The gambles they took, look, they actually lost this game anyway, but they were working early. But that only works if G2 does exactly that. If G2 doesn't, you have taken such a crazy gamble with your starting positions on the map. You might just put yourself completely behind in the game. Like, you could essentially, not like straight lose the game, but you put yourself in a really bad spot taking up those positions. So, like, if you're going to do that in a game against them in the playoffs, that almost suggests to me that you don't think you can beat them playing normal League of Legends. You can't just do a normal draft, a normal lane phase, get ahead in one lane. You don't think you can do that. You think you have to do crazy gambles because that's something you do in a BO1 game. They did that in a playoff game. It worked, but I was thinking to myself the whole time, dude, what if you've guessed wrong? What if that's just a jungler and someone's going, you know what I mean? Like that, what did you think? You're a jungler. You know what those setups are like. They're weird, right?
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of funny because I used to play in the lane swap meta back then, and that's the kind of thing about lane swaps in general. It's a lot of mind games of knowing like, oh, they're going to swap this game, so they're going to go top, but they know that we are also going to go top and match them, so we actually go bot. And it's kind of like, you have to kind of play those kind of mind games. So I think like the gamble they took, I think it's not relatively that big of a risk. It is a risk if they actually do go bot, but I think it's relatively safe to assume that they will actually look to a swap because they have like losing top, losing bot lane, hard losing bot lane, and enemy team has a Volibear. So it's like worst case, okay, you do mismatch, but then you just have to run bot, I guess, and you will lose some CS, but you will at least be able to play the game normally. But I just think like lane swaps are super fun to watch.
Oh,
like
sure.
I don't want to go fully in on the drama about like
no, don't worry about that.
But I just want to say something about like how refreshing it is to see G2 just do like a lane swap and stuff like this, because for years now I've been watching like LEC and it's always like, oh, LCK, okay, they play like this and they do this, okay, we copy, and we're just worst version of like LPL and LCK. Like we're always going to be worse trying to beat them at their own game. So it's just really refreshing to me to see like G2 even this split, like being the first to pull out the Rek'Sai top, being the first to pull out the Zac top, I think. I'm not sure if it was the first, but they're like willing to innovate. They're willing to change and be creative. Like we're not going to have this like, oh, let's just keep doing what LCK are doing. Oh, Chovy played Aurelion Sol. I think it's good now. And we just copy. Like we're never going to win like that. So I was just really happy to see like the lane swap and actually making the game like somewhat interesting. Because if we can't beat the Koreans 2v2, let's just not lane versus them and let's do a lane swap. And it's just perfect to me. I think it's might actually be like if we can perfect this kind of lane swap or other strategies, we might actually have a chance. We might catch some teams off guard, like do a lane swap, but they're not ready for it. Because teams who, at least back then as well, like teams who actually know how to play lane swaps, they just had the edge. Like Giants in 2016, they only lane swapped every single game, and they were top 2 in the regular season. And then they removed the lane swap in playoffs, and they became the bottom tier team. So it's like, if you're able to actually do the lane swap properly and you're able to play these kind of mind games, it's super, super fun to watch, at least when you understand it, but can be boring as a viewer for sure.
No,
so I really love that series. I just want to say I really love that series.
If people don't know the history, as you said, Riot were literally the ones who disabled lane swap. They made like the fucking tower, take them all on the top one, and then eventually they went to a plate. So obviously that philosophy's continued on. But the other thing is, what people forget always is this. Europe were the ones who mastered that shit first. And then literally even Koreans had to come and look at the fucking VODs and start figuring it out themselves. They weren't doing that shit, actually. When Europe did it every game, Korea didn't. And so I agree with you, especially because G2's the one that's like willing to do it. Well, G2 already has the best draft and probably the most champions available because of their players. Yeah. But like they're a fantastically GM team. This is actually the one where I agree with you. I could see Dylan Falco at least having a game which otherwise you might have had like a hard time in the draft against a specific, like you think of like a BLG, you're going to have a hard time drafting a winning comp against them. I tell you what, if you do some crazy lane swap and you gamble and pays off, now there's suddenly a game that they're not prepared for. They don't know what it's like to be in this weird scenario. Like, well, I thought we had the winning lane there. I thought this match, we planned out the jungler to come at this point. That could give you a game. That could get you a game in a series.
No, but that's the thing also that's very underrated when it comes to League of Legends, like pro play. Making the enemy team react to you and play your own game, like making them play your game, they're always going to lose at that. Like if you're able to force the enemy team to play your game, like you're always going to have the advantage because you have more experience on it, you have more like knowledge about the lane swaps, or even forget the lane swaps, like whatever you do in League of Legends, if you're able to force the enemy team to react to you, and this is one way to actually do it, is always by swapping. I mean, even if swapping your bot lane into top, etc., like just forcing the enemy team to react to you, you're always going to have the edge when it comes to playing. So I'm just really happy to see that we're getting creative, we're trying some stuff, and the G2 obviously is the only team, like, I would be shit scared if I was drafting versus G2 now. Like, let's say Dylan Falco has a bad day, he does a terrible draft, it's like, oh, well, it's fine, let's just lane swap. It's like, what do you expect about these guys now? Like, now that they've shown it too, like, how do you beat these guys? It's impossible. It's like, even if you, like, mindlessly, like, try to outdraft Dylan Falco, and that's pretty impossible with G2's champion pool, but let's say you manage to do it, they can just lane swap out of nowhere. Yes. And now you have to, like, go into a game, and how are you going to practice lane swaps? You barely can do the basics in scrims, so you're constantly, practicing like the most basic shit in scrims, like, oh, we need to learn how to set up dragon. It's like, you don't have time to practice lane swaps. Like, you can't even crawl, and you're trying to walk. So it's just I just think G2 are gonna roll over anyone in the finals, and there's just no contest in that sense.
It's why I also think the other teams have to fix the roster first and foremost, not even how you play. Because Dylan Falco already was, if all the players say this in my interviews, they say he's the best at baiting the pick. As in, he purposely leaves that pick open. That is one of your best picks and is what you build your comp around. But because when you pick it, he's got like 4 different counters built out from that. And then even though you end up getting a couple of your picks, he ends up with the better comp or the one that counters that or doesn't allow that champion to do what it wants to do. He's already good at that. And then because he's got all the best players almost, he's got the champion ocean to pick from. So his solutions to what you're going to do are all over the place. Meanwhile, think of some of the teams we were talking about earlier. Most of the other teams, we're talking about actually being pretty cynical drafting if you're a BDS, if you're Fnatic probably even. Some of these squads out there, you can't just pick any champion in the game and you can't just switch comp halfway into the draft either. You've got to sort of see it through. That's what you practiced. That's another thing about having inexperienced players. You can't just throw them in a game with champions they've never played before and go just win against G2. They're not going to do it. There was always going to be that edge for G2.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think that's why also no team will ever be able to contest G2 with the current rosters that we have. Like, I think Vitality could, if they just make that little tweak, I think Vitality could actually be a top contender. Like, they have the strong enough individual skill, but they just lack that, like, explosiveness from jungle per se. Not to flame Douglas.
No.
Yeah, but it's just like, if we just tweak the rosters a little bit and make them, like, more complementary towards each other, then I think we could actually have, instead of just having like, I don't know, like 8 dysfunctional teams, we would actually just have like clear top 4, top 5 like teams that would actually we would be happy to send them to Worlds. We'd be like, these guys are our best and they can like do really good. But instead, every team we send to Worlds, like, yeah, these guys are good, but they have clear weaknesses. But it's like, yeah, I think if we can just fix that, then the EU future might actually look good, and we stop giving rookies like 8 years of playtime to see when they will develop, then I think we might have a chance.
And then the last factor, because it's an obvious one, but if you're going to go week to week on a show like this, guys, we have to wax lyrical about who does well. The one other chance you at least had in some of the past splits, last year especially, was there'd be times when Caps would just have an all right series, or he'd just pick a better champion and not go hard. Mate, it feels like now, like he can just do whatever he wants. Like, he goes fucking... This is like old Caps. He just goes super hard many times he wants. It fucking works, mate. He's too good.
No, he looks like old peak form Caps, or he's peaking right now. Like, I have no idea, but there used to be the meme of like, oh, Craps, like he used to play really bad and he was really inconsistent like back then, but now he just looks like on form. Like, there's just nothing that can beat him. He beats everyone in lane. He completely carries every single team fight, and he also, like, the thing I saw when he was like playing versus BDS as well is like, he goes top and dives Humanoid. Then he runs straight to bot, and then he just kills the enemy bot lane as well. And he's just all over the place on his Aurelion Soul. And it's like, holy fuck. Like, I'm so glad we have Caps. Like, any team with Caps, it's just automatically going to become the top 1 team. Like, except the Reckless and Caps, the G2. Split. Besides then, that guy has gone to the finals every single time. Like
Yes.
he's by far like the GOAT, I would say.
Yeah.
Like this region is run by Caps. Right.
And obviously, as much as we praised all the other aspects of G2 and the draft, he's also a massive chance to win. Listen, again, you're not going to like just straight up win a best of 5. Like if you actually play against like BLG, you're playing against Knight, or you play against, I don't know, it could be top esports yet. Cream's pretty good. Like the difference is he actually is capable. He can give you at least a game. He can have a game he takes over and gets ahead and has the right pick. You get some picks for him. Like that's another thing.
Yeah.
If you're a European fan or a Western fan, this guy gives you a reason to at least watch these games.
Yeah, for sure. Like if I see Caps versus Knight or Caps versus Faker or whatever, I'll be like, okay, there is a chance, you know. But if you see like, I don't know, okay, no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not.
Certain other mid laners,
But
let's just say.
yeah. But let's just say another mid laner, you'll be like, oh shit, man. You know, like Rio's eventually gonna get run over. But when you see like Caps, you're like, okay, I mean, this guy will be able to contest, at least go like 50-50, or he might even win the lane. Like, so yeah, that's like the hope that we have. Like the shining light of our region is legit Caps.
Right,
And
like
it's just fun to watch.
Like true jungle mains, when you're sick of it all and it's basically over, you just quit. To see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.